What's going on, everybody? I'm really excited about today. See, one of the things that's great about this hobby is there's so many different ways to collect. And there are so many great people. Today I've got two really good guys that are going to be joining me, and I'm going to kind of pick their brains about how they collect, because they collect very differently. Like, their strategy's different, what they collect is different. And because of that, I think that there are always some tips and tricks and ideas and thoughts and plans and strategies that we can learn from other collectors. See, there isn't a right way. The way I do it is always changing, but it also is just one way to do it. So I have really gotten a lot of joy recently about talking to other collectors about how they collect, how they participate in the hobby, and learning some things from them. And I strategize differently after a lot of these conversations because they bring up some really good points. So two great guys today that I'm going to be talking to, and they're going to be sharing with us how they collect, their strategies, and some things for a lot of us to think about. So I'm super excited to have these guys on. Both have great YouTube channels if you've not already subscribed. Let's go ahead and check it out.
What's going on, everybody? So, like I was just saying, I got two great guests today. Two people I'm really excited to have some conversation with. You know, for a long time, I wasn't doing collaborations. I wasn't doing, things where I was talking with other collectors, at least not on camera. And then I started to do it, and I'm like, this is so much fun. I want to keep doing more of this. It's too much fun not to continue to do. So I'm going to bring on my first guest here. So my first guest, you probably recognize. This is Theo from Clemente Collector is his channel. And again, as always, if you're not a subscriber of Theo's channel, Clemente Collector, or his other collaborative channel, For Collectors, I highly recommend it. Both channels obviously have Theo, but they're a little bit different in kind of their format and the sorts of things that they do. How's it going, Theo?
It's going really good, Greg. Yeah, just to give somebody a little rundown on Four Collectors, because we're going to be doing a trade night on Sunday at 9 o'clock at night, which should be a lot
So
of fun for the community.
so that would be tonight, because
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
recording this on Friday, but this is going to be uploaded on Sunday. So tonight we're talking about. Go ahead.
yep. So the Four Collector channel is a group of us got together and we wanted to just make collaboration type videos like you're doing tonight, and we wanted to do stuff like trade night, shout out smaller channels, just really just drive home the collectors out there on YouTube, and just make some great content. And then my personal channel is more focused on my Clemente collection and individual videos. So
Awesome. So
yeah.
we're going to get more into sort of Theo's collecting style and his strategies and kind of how he's gotten to where he is now here in just a minute. But we're also joined by my guy Billy Ballgame. So we were just talking a second ago before we hit record about how I kind of feel like I know you, but this is the first time we've ever actually spoken. Is today.
Yes.
Um, if you're not subscribed to Billy Ballgame's channel, again, another great guy, a person that I'm excited to get to know more tonight and hear more about his collecting style. But he's got a great channel, very down to earth guy, very likable guy. Likes to share his collection, likes to talk about kind of what he's up to and what he's doing. So if somebody's not yet subscribed to your channel, tell us kind of a little bit about like what sorts of things you do.
Chaos. So, no, really, I'm just a dude who loves baseball and loves to talk about baseball cards. So I have everything, from the 60s to junk wax to modern. And I may talk about any of it on my channel in any given week.
What percentage of, I mean, we'll just get straight into it. What percentage of your collection would you say is modern, is junk wax, and is vintage?
I would say probably about half of it is vintage, graded wise. Ungraded, it's a lot more modern and junk wax stuff.
And you said 60s. I feel like I've seen you show. I mean, I know that you're big in the 1960 set.
Yeah.
Do you have some cards from the 50s too, or is it really the 60s is your main focus?
I have a few from the 50s, not a whole lot at this point. I've been working on a 60 top set for quite a while, and that's where I try to focus until I get it finished. But it's been dragging out for a while now.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is I wanted to really, well, we're recording it at night. This will probably upload in the morning, but is you guys collect very differently. Theo Theo, tell us about how you collect. What is it? I mean, we just heard Billy kind of talk about what he's got and what he collects. How would you describe your collecting?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty narrow focused when it comes to collecting. When I first started, I set a goal of collecting every playing days Clemente card, and that's not just the tops cards. It's everything food issue, oddball, every single Clemente card. So I've been very narrowly focused on just spending my budget on that. And then as I've gone along, as most people do, I've had a little bit of little branches off here. I really fell in love with everything that Dick Groat was about, because as I grew up, he was actually a Pitt Panther announcer, and I started learning about how he was a two-sport athlete and all that kind of stuff. So I started a Dick Groat PC, and recently, after finding out how big of a fan of Stan Musial my father-in-law was, I started a Stan Musial PC. But really, those two branches, they're just kind of on the side. I pick up cards when I can. They're usually low budget cards, nothing over like $50. My main focus is really Clemente. So
would you say 90% of your collection is Clemente?
yeah, 90 to 95%. Yep.
And when you're that narrowly focused on a single like player super collector, I mean, you can see all the pirate stuff and Clemente stuff behind you right now. If you're just listening, he's got, on the wall, he's got his case with a bunch of Clemente stuff. He's got pirate bobbleheads back there. He's got some different Clemente pictures and things on the wall. What are like the pros and cons when you're a kind of a narrowly focused collector that's really into a player and branching out to two or three? What are the goods with that, and what are the bads with that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the main good is Clemente is my favorite, not just baseball player, but my favorite sports player of all time, and it allows me to get cards of my favorite player, and not maybe pick up a card that maybe the player's not very meaningful to me, but I needed to pick him up because he's a Hall of Famer. So every card to me is very meaningful, and it's really cool showing a fellow Clemente fan or Pirates fan what his cards look like, some of the cards they may never have seen. The negatives of it, I would say, is when you start player collecting, you start going down rabbit trails of getting, I call them vintage variation cards. So like I have an example here. I think a lot of people know what the exhibit cards look like, but I have three of them now. So the one is the normal exhibit card that's blank back, and then they made a red stat back variation, and then they made a black stat back variation, and I actually still have one more exhibit card to buy. So that would be like an example of, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it pitfalls, but one of the things you run into when you're a player collector. One other little rabbit trail that I just started doing recently is the team cards. So every team card that Clemente's on the front of, I'm starting to gradually work on those. So
yeah, my problems as a collector are very different than yours. So let me jump back over to Billy. what are the pros and cons of not being a narrowly focused player collector, and instead you're saying a good amount of vintage and then some junk wax and then some modern? What are the pros and cons for you that you've experienced with the different with that?
So there's probably a lot. So the pros would be I always can find cards at a card shop, right? That could also be a con, as well as the fact that there are always cards that I want, which
Yeah.
is why I'm going on 3 years on this 60 top set and still haven't finished it yet. And so for me, I like a lot of players. So Cardinals all-time greats and Hall of Famers. Ken Griffey Jr. is behind me, and up here in the corner is an autographed bat back there, and all of his rookie cards lined up. So I like a lot of players. I like what I imagine my collection growing into at some point is I would like to have all the Hall of Famers and all the Hall of Fame rookie cards from the 50s through the 90s. Eventually, that's the plan.
So just let me say that one more time. So you said every rookie card of every Hall of Famer from the 50s to the 90s is the ultimate goal.
And all the Hall of Fame player cards as well. Maybe that would be more difficult in the 90s, right? But at least from the 50s through up to 89.
And now, see, that seems overwhelming to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
That seems like so much. My issue is I can't stay focused because there's so much stuff I like that I can't. Like, I'll find myself buying a Mark McGuire 85 Topps Olympic card because I was like, oh, I wanted that as a kid. And then I'll buy an 85 Fleer Kirby Puckett card because I wanted that as a kid. And then I'm like, looking at my saved eBay searches, and I've got 1933 Gaudy in there, and I'm looking at Mel Ott cards, and I'm looking at Jimmy Fox's, and then I'm buying T206, and it's like I am the opposite of you, Theo. I'm the complete opposite of you. So in a way, I'm jealous, but I mean, so does it get so for you, Theo, when you get some money built up to buy something, do you get as excited to buy the red stat back card that you just showed as you did your first one of those? Or is it like, well, I need it and now I've checked it off the list? Or is each one equally as exciting?
No, I wouldn't say each one's equally exciting. I do still. So the other one big thing that I forgot to say is a plus, and this will tie into your question is I have a like a snapshot of what all the food issue and oddball cards were from a whole time period, basically from 1955 to 1973. I could see what every post serial card looked like. I can see I'm going to eventually see what all the cons cards look like. I'm going to see what all the Venezuelan cards look like, what all the Apici cards look like. So unlike you guys, I'm gradually seeing what the whole landscape looked like in the 60s, right? Granted, Clemente, there's some food issue stuff that was, regional. I'm not going to sit here and say he's on every single set from the 60s, but I'm just saying I can look at my wall and I can go, all right, here's all the 60s stuff. Here's all, and to me, that's really, really cool. And these exhibits have a story too. Like, hey, in 1962, they decided to put the stats on the back, and then the top Venezuelans have a story. But to go back to your question, though, ultimately there are some cards that are more rare, more scarce, and those usually turn me on the most whenever I finally am able to obtain one of them. Because whenever you have a card that might be less than 100 out there and you get one, you really feel like it's special. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like right now, what would be like the top two cards on your list? Like you've got $1,000, you walk into the National and you walk up to a table. What are the two cards that you just would be just pumped to stumble into?
It's a good question. That's the thing about me. I do try to keep open minded, and if I had $1,000, I would go to the national, and I have about 30 cards I'd be willing to get, because I don't want to shrink myself down and then pay too much for a card. But
Mhm.
hypothetically, if every card was there, I'd probably continue to work on my Venezuelan Clemente set. I have 4 of the 7 cards, but the 3 that I have left are probably the hardest to get. I'd love to get the 62 Venezuelan Clemente card, which would be him, up there to bat, just like his U.S. Version card. And just one of the other ones would be fine also. So probably I would go after Topps Venezuelan.
How about you, Billy? So you walk into the national. You're going to the national this year, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you go into the national. You've got $1,000 in your pocket. You're a 60 set collector, but you collect a lot
Everything.
like me. You collect everything. What would you be the most pumped for? Not like what's the best deal, but what card, if you could acquire it, would you just be pumped?
Well, I'm looking for, hopefully at the national, Stan Musial rookie.
Mhm.
So that would be number 1, and then probably Nolan Ryan rookie would be number 2.
Now, when you say Stan Musial rookie, what is that to you? Because
48
they're
Bowman.
okay. So you like the 48 Bowman more than the Leaf?
I don't necessarily like the looks of it better. I like it budget wise better, and the fact that it's actually his rookie card. I
Yeah.
think the Leaf looks better.
So the 40, so there, there's the whole, is it 48, 49? Most people have established at this point is 49 Leaf. You think the 49 Leaf looks better than the 48 Bowman?
I do.
And is that because of the color, or you just like the looks of it?
I think the color has a lot to do with it.
See, I love the 48 Bowman Musial. He's got this floppy hat on. He looks like he's like 16 years old. It's a tight shot of his face. The other one, I feel like some of the colors just they kind of, I don't know, they detract a little bit to me.
Yeah.
But I like them both. But for me, I love the 48 Bowman. I'm a big 48 Bowman Musial fan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great card, and you kind of really have to split hairs to, decide which one you like. At least for me, which one I like more than the other one. But you're
So
right.
you're
48 Bowman's great. It looks like he just pulled his hat out of his back pocket and threw it on the sand.
exactly like right off the Sandlot.
Yeah.
Now, when you are a set collector but also a player collector, do you rank like because one of the things I struggle with, and I think a lot of us that are listening struggle with, is where do we spend our dollars? And so that's one of the reasons I'm trying to figure out. Like Theo's saying, the Venezuelans are kind of like fairly high on my list as a player collector. They're pretty rare, but they're known about, and you're saying, a couple of the big rookie cards are, especially being from, living in the St. Louis area. Like, I totally get it. But when you're a set collector and a player collector, where do you decide where your money's going to go? Like, when do you go, I haven't bought anything for the 60 set in a while. I guess I should. Or do you get excited to buy something for the 60 set as much as a player?
Well, I get just as excited to buy something for the 60 set when I can find the right cards to add. So for me, kind of how I break it up, because you're right, it's a lot of cards. It's a huge undertaking. I break it up. I run my collection kind of similar to Mike Moynihan, where he breaks it up by years, whereas Chris from Missouri does it by player.
Mm-hmm.
So I do it by years. So once I finish the 60 set, I'm not going to build sets anymore, because I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on commons that I don't care about. So after I finish this one, I'll move to 61 and I'll buy the rookie cards and the Hall of Famers, and then I'll move through every year. Is the plan.
Sure. And the plan can change, and that's okay, right?
At a moment's notice, the plan can change.
It absolutely changes. Now, Theo, when you're primarily a Clemente collector, and you have a lot of Clemente cards, but there are still a fair amount that are still out there, and you haven't been really back in the hobby for all that long, right? I mean, considering how far back, like when did you kind of jump back in? And because to get to where you are already with how much you have Clemente wise over the amount of time that you've been back in, I think is really impressive. But the concern is it's not going to take that much longer if you stay at this pace to start going, now what? So
Well,
how did you when did you get back in?
yeah, so I got back in May of 2021. So it'll be 3 years this May, collecting again. And you know, that all started with me finding my father showing me his baseball cards. I honestly, in 2021 was the first time I ever saw vintage baseball cards ever. So like the first time I watched a YouTube video that showed 63 tops, that was the first time I saw 63 tops. Like literally,
Wow.
like yeah, like it was really strange because you know I'm 37 years old, and at the time I was 34, seeing some of these sets for the first time, some of the cards for the first time. so
Wow.
yeah, it was a really weird experience for me, and it made me a little bit naive in my first few videos because I would show a card that I was super excited for, but to somebody who's been collecting vintage for over 20 years, that card really like okay, thanks for showing us. So it kind of took a while for me to get like a barometer of what actually people actually like. Oh wow, I can't. But to be honest with you, the community is so supportive. So I don't want to make it seem like people are like, "What are you doing showing that card?" But back to your question though. I'm currently at 111 Clemente playing days cards.
Mhm.
The issue is a lot of the easy stuff's gone now. So I'm gonna be really digging in, really trying to work my budget because like the bazookas and the cons, some of these cards are really rare, so they get really expensive. So I honestly, I as far as pace goes, yeah, I'll probably spend the same amount in the next 3 years, but it's gonna be less cards. So
Sure.
I think I do have a long time left to go, to be honest with you.
Do you have like a set budget? Like how do you decide what you can spend on cards without feeling guilty? Because I mean, I know you have kids. I know
Yeah.
you're married. I know you have a
Right.
house. You have a more. I mean,
Right.
how does that work for you?
Yeah. So like my monthly budget is about $100, and basically, you know, me and my wife have it worked out where, you know, it's the honor system. I keep track of it myself, and then like Christmas, birthdays, I ask everybody for eBay gift cards. So you know, I don't think I've gotten any new clothes in the last 4 years. So it's really anytime I can get some free money, it goes to the card budget basically.
Yeah.
And you know stuff like that. If I sell any cards of if I sell any cards, and that goes back into the card budget. So you know I've had situations like that where now that I'm a little bit more of an expert when it comes to maybe Clemente cards, you know I'll never say I'm fully an expert on anything, but I might see something that's selling way too low, and now I might pick that up and be able to make some money towards the hobby. So I think us as collectors need to take advantage of the knowledge we know. You know what I mean? So that's my personal opinion on it.
How about you, Billy? I mean, how do you budget? How do you budget? I mean, I've heard you talk about this a little bit on your channel, but in case somebody hasn't heard this, expand on for us. How do you uh I mean, because again, you have kids, you're married, you have a house. I mean, how do you figure out your budget when you have these grandiose plans of every Hall of Fame card over several decades?
So mine is pretty much a hard and fast budget of $200 that I really don't deviate from for the most part. Like, you know, obviously I can't buy every card for the 1960 top set, for example, on $200 a month. So there are certain occasions where I will spend more than $200 on a card, but I always pay myself back. So like when I bought the Mickey Mantle for the 60 set, that was basically 4 months worth of budget So I had 2 months saved up. I took an advance of 2 months, and then I didn't buy cards for 2 more months while I was waiting to pay myself back.
Yeah. And you have it, do you do it like Theo, where it's like you just kind of keep track on your own, or do you have a side account, or how do you do it?
Well, here recently, in order to allow me to go to the national, I started coaching 2 sports for my school. So now we take one of those coaching stipends and it gets deposited into my card account. And then, so between that, I have my $200 a month collecting budget, and then whatever I'm setting back for the national all comes out of that account.
Yeah, I used to do it like Theo does it sounds like, where it's kind of like I just kind of track it
Yeah.
within my regular account. And as soon as I got a second checking account that was just my card account, I felt like it like took all the pressure off. It totally freed up the situation.
Yeah.
And I really benefited from doing that. It also allowed me to, because sometimes when you're calculating stuff, you're like, I don't know, it gets a little ridiculous when you're like, oh, and then shipping and then tax. And then it's like,
Yeah.
for me, it was tough, but now I just have like my PayPal account hooked up to that checking account. It's like, it's so freeing for me at least. But I'm like you guys. I mean, my budget every month is $100, and last month I just dropped my video today on what I bought during February, and I spent about $500 or $600. So people are like, Greg, I thought you only spent $100. I'm like, I do only spend $100. I spent $100 from my paycheck goes into my card account, but my card account has other money in it from things like I do a whatnot sale. Money goes in there. I sell some cards on eBay. Money goes in there. YouTube peels me off a few crumbs every once in a while. That money goes in there. So it's like all my money goes into this one place, and then it kind of builds up, and then I have a little bit of freedom to just kind of buy a little bit. But I also want to show up with money for the national. So are you saving up for the national, Theo, or how's that going to work?
Yeah. So what me and my wife talked about is my work actually gives a bonus every year, and she allows me to take $1,000 out of that bonus towards the national. So it is actually separate from the $100 that I budget accordingly. So, but it comes at a great time of the year and it works out perfect. And I appreciate my wife letting me letting me spend that much money on cards.
Yeah. Well, I think it's healthy for us to be doing stuff like this because there's so many negative things that people could get into. It's like if your husband's in on his phone, like looking on eBay for sports cards, it could be a lot worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it's if that's the worst problem that our wives have got, then they've got a pretty good deal, I think. Um, so so you had mentioned, Theo, about you had kind of got back and you even had the month and the everything. And so sounds like it was almost exactly 3 years ago that you
Mhm.
got back in. Do you ever look forward? So like Billy's just saying a second ago, he has this big vision for what he's going to have. Do you look far ahead like that at what your vision would be, or do you look 3 months at a time or 6 months at a time, or do you have an ultimate goal of some certain things that you want?
Yeah, I mean, that's been my thing the whole time has been being flexible. And I know that sounds like it's not a good plan, but my thing about being flexible is I I always want I always want to be open to the cards I have remaining, and I want to have a wide net basically. And my friend Matt's an errand collector, and he's got all these Excel files with all the errands he still needs, and he goes, "I want to see yours," and I go, "I don't need one, Matt. Whenever I see a card at the show, I know if I have it or not." So I'm a little bit different. Like I have all my saved searches, and recently with the market being down, I've been able to obtain cards that weren't in my. I would have had to budget 6 months, but with the market being down, I've been going after some cards like I showed on my channel, the 71 Peachy. That was a card that I was like, that's gonna have to be a national purchase if I buy one, basically. and I was able to obtain it with my Christmas money and my budget and things like that. But that would be the main thing I would say, Greg, is obviously my main goal is to collect every non-playing days Clemente card. But as of now, I never want to put myself in a situation where I call out a specific card I want. And that's the interesting thing with me with the Billy answering, because I think he said he's on 1960 right now. The interesting thing to me is it's cool that he's progressing, but I would be worried. What if a 61 card is 50% of what it should go for? It's an auction on eBay, and he missed out on it, and he's waiting until he goes to 61. Like, that's my debate about not being flexible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what do you think about that, Billy? I mean, do you, if you see other cards, or do you have saved searches that are narrow on what you're looking for, or do you not even see some of the things that come up that might be good deal? I mean, I'll give you an example. So, like, I love Ted Williams. I've always loved Ted Williams, and I wasn't looking for his 1951 Bowman card, but a really nice 4.5 popped up on just one of my searches. It popped up like 2-3 months ago, and it was a price that I felt was about $100 less than what it should go for. And I'm like, well, yeah, I want to have that card someday. It's not a card I thought I might be buying right now.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm just gonna offer this guy 400. And I thought the looks of this card and everything, I thought it was well over a $500 card, probably 550 in the centering and everything. And the guy counters me at 425, and I'm like, I would have done 450. Like, I'm pumped. But like, if I hadn't had the 51 Bowman search in one of my safe searches, I wouldn't have seen it.
Right.
So what's your take on that, Billy?
So on eBay, as far as I know off the top of my head, because I haven't bought a card off of eBay for a while, all my saved searches are 60 tops related.
Yeah.
But when I go to shows, or if I'm not seeing anything pop up in eBay that I'm looking for, then I start looking at turning over other rocks, looking for other stuff. Because again, I want primarily the focus to be on 60 top set. But I search for other players almost every time I'm on eBay. But really, like right now, I'm not looking to buy anything if I can keep from it until after the National. But I got, a 1952 tops red Shane Dienst at the last card show I went to, along with an Albert Pujols. And I bought those because I couldn't find anything 60 that I wanted to add to the set.
Do you feel like when you go to a show that you have to buy something, or would you be okay if you left and you didn't buy anything?
I talked about this in one of my most recent videos. I feel like I took a loss if I don't buy something at a show.
Right. I had a hard time with that for a long time. And then like 2 shows in the last 6 months, I didn't buy anything. And I was surprisingly okay with it.
Yeah.
It was, I've gotten to the point now where I see so many of the same dealers and stuff that they're like my buddies.
Right.
And so like, I just go and I'm just like hanging out, talking cards with my friends. And like, that scratches the itch enough for me sometimes. Most of the stuff that I'm currently at the top of my list are not things that I'm going to see most of the time at a local card show.
Right.
So it's like, with Theo, like he texted me a while ago. And he's like, hey, if you see one of the Clemente Bazooka cards, like shoot me in this sort of grade, shoot me a text, call me because, those don't come up. And I'm like, yeah, like that's the thing is some of the stuff for some collectors, it's like it's not going to just fall in your lap. Like and when it does, you got to be ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually happened with me, Greg. I didn't have a save search on. Well, actually, November. I said I'm not going to buy anything in November. I'm going to save up. Well, a McGregor Clemente card actually sold, and I didn't know it. And it's a 1965. It's him with the Rawlings glove, and it's his staff on the bottom, and it's under 100 pop count. So they don't come up often at all. I think 2 sold last year total. So a PSA 3 ends up selling for $220 after I go back to history and see it. And I'm kicking myself that I wasn't paying attention because I had the mindset of, I can't buy right now, I'm saving. And then one comes up just recently, and I haven't seen one since November, and it was an SGC 1.5. It sold for $300. I was like, I was going all the way to 250, and then I was out, and I reached out to Mike Petty and I said, Mike, I know you have one of these cards. I was like, I'm heartbroken, man. I missed out on this. He goes, oh, I just bought this PSA 3 in November, and I got a really great price on it. And I was like, no way. I was like,
He was the guy.
yeah, he ended up being the guy. But my main point of my story though is I don't know how guys stop looking on eBay. I can't. Like I keep thinking, if I stop looking for a week, I'll have another situation where something gets past me,
Yeah, no, I mean, so one of the sets I'm really into is I love the T206 set, and one of the reasons I love it, it's historic and everything. But when I was a kid, I used to just look through the cases and cases of T206, all the tobacco cards, and I just thought they were amazing. And like I was just like, I just want to have a common someday. Like
Yeah.
that was like, but it wasn't really affordable with my budget as a little kid, and it would have been weird to spend all your money on some common from 100 years old, or at the time 90 years old.
Yeah.
And so now that I can afford them, I love being able to acquire them. But I have like a range of what I can afford, and it's from like, a 2.5 to a 1.
Right.
And most 2.5s to a 1 look awful. They look awful. They're way off center. They've got creases through the face. They've got stains because someone spilled their coffee on them. So when one comes up,
Right.
I want to get it. But then the problem is I'm not the only person who's been waiting on a nice looking centered one. So then it ends up selling kind of high. I mean, there was a T206 Nap Lajoie portrait card that was like on a 10-day auction that I was watching for 10 days. I'm just like, just get here already, right? And I finally, it's like the night of, I mean, it's a beautiful, I think it was a 2.5. It was beautiful. I put my bid in. My bid was higher than one had sold for in 2-3 years. And I wasn't even close. Like I just got smoked. And I'm just like, oh, now how many more out there are there that are in that grade range that I'm going to like? So like to your point, Theo, is when you start getting to a narrow point in what you're looking for, when one comes up, you have to strike and you have to jump on it and you have to get it, whatever it takes, because another one might not show up like for years.
Yeah. I think one counter to your situation is what I've noticed is taking the chance with ungraded is sometimes the way you can get that 1.5 to a 2. Like for example, let me grab it here. I didn't think I would have a Collins card yet. Okay. Well, this card was ungraded. This card was there it is. This card was raw. Okay. Online. And in a 1 grade, which I got it graded, in a 1 grade, they typically sell for $175 to $200. Okay, in this year, and I got this for $60 ungraded. Now, obviously, most people I don't like to take a risk. Well, I mean, you're gonna get the card, you're gonna be able to look it over. I hope you'll be able to tell if it's a counterfeit or not, but I don't think many people are gonna counterfeit a Collins card and put stains on it and make it a 1. They're probably going to make it a 5 or a 6 at minimum, right? So to your point, though, I know T206 have the counterfeit issue, but there's the blacklight test. There's some other stuff. I don't know. I think I'd be looking more for raw ones if I were you, and taking advantage. But what do you say to that? I guess.
No, I think that there's truth to that. Most raw T206s are commons and they're heavily damaged. If they're in decent condition or it's a big name, rarely will I see one pop up. And
Yeah.
if one does pop up, it's usually at a price that's assuming a pretty decent grade into it already. So there's not a lot of meat for the what you're risking. It's not worth the upside. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do it. Now,
Right.
Billy, I know you send a lot of stuff into SGC, and you've talked about on your channel how for a long time you were doing it for Chris, our our tech guru, Chris. And do you buy mostly ungraded and then send stuff in, or do you buy graded? I mean, how does that usually work for you? Because I know you send a fair amount of stuff in, but what's your strategy?
Usually I buy graded. If I buy off of eBay and stuff like that, like I buy it graded. And that's why, like, if a card pops up, like, I don't necessarily have to buy it right then and now, because what I'm looking for is not rare, right? The next
Right.
card I plan on buying is a 60 tops Willie McCovey. Like, if I don't get this one, there'll be 15 others on there tomorrow. You know what I mean? So they're going to be there when I'm ready to buy it. It's just a matter of where I can get the best deal. So to go along with that, when I buy cards ungraded, 9 times out of 10, I'm at a show looking at that card, giving it the sniff test and touching it and all that stuff.
Now, so a lot of people have given me grief over the year and a half I've been doing this of, if I'm keeping a card, why would I get it graded? What's the point of getting it graded if it's going into my collection? So when you're buying ungraded cards, you give it the sniff test, meets your approval, smells like an old mildewy book, right? And then you buy it and you bring it home and you send it into SGC. Why do you send it in for grading if it's going to go in your collection? Now, I'm not insinuating that that's a bad idea, but what is the reason you do it?
Well, I think a lot of people, not all the time, but a lot of the times when people take that stance, for the most part, they're just anti-grading to begin with a lot of the time. So for me, I grade cards for a lot of reasons. And I talked about it recently on my channel. Like, you can protect a card in a penny sleeve and a top loader, right? So
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about protection, but I've seen penny sleeves stick to cards. I've seen cards stuck in binder pages. So part of it is for protection. And then just another part is to have it validated from a third party, hopefully that it's not altered, it's not trimmed, it's not colored, all those things that we like a third party grader to do for us. And then I just like the looks of them in a slab on a wall together with a 1960 top set.
And looking behind you, it looks like you have SGC and PSA graded stuff.
Yeah.
That are and we'll go to you in a second on this, Theo. But
Yeah.
Billy, what is your philosophy? Is it not matter what the holder is? It's just you just want a nice looking card that's been authenticated, and if they're mismatched, they're mismatched. Like, what's your thought?
Well, I want a nice looking card that's graded, but I have 175 graded cards in my collection right now. 100 of them are PSA, 72 are SGC, and then I have an oddball CSG and a couple BVGs or a Beckett. So, like, when I buy them, I want them to be PSA and SGC.
Yeah, and Theo, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're SGC through and through. Do you have any PSA cards?
Yeah, I have a couple that like here's one that I did in a trade, but I might cross it over. I have 3 PSA slabs, 2 of which are like this where I could cross them, but one of them was the Manny's card I got last year at the National, and SGC doesn't have that size slab. So I don't really have a choice on that one. So I'm gonna have to keep it in PSA for now. But mine's pretty simple. I love how I just love how they look. I love how they present. The nice thing is, you never want to you never want to buy a $15 card, spend $15 on grading, and it's actually valued at $8. Like that just feels it still kind of feels kind of weird. That's where I struggle with the team card sometimes because like this team card's $30, but I could get one raw for 8. So and same condition. Let's talk. Same condition. So kind of that's where it kind of gets weird for me. The good part with Clemente is usually even after grading, it's not worth less money than in that it's not that scenario very often, right? So, but I love how they look, and like a lot of card collectors, I want everything to look the same. We all have our
Yeah.
quirks and stuff, and I like how they all look the same. So
And is it when you started up and you started putting it together and then you wanted them to be the same, why did you initially go with SGC instead of PSA? Was
yeah,
it
so
the Go ahead.
it's kind of weird though, actually, because I got my dad's cards and he wanted me to sell them. And I started doing research on YouTube, and everybody said do PSA, do PSA. So I sent the cards to Nash Cards, who does subgrading for PSA, and PSA closed down that week. And I was like, I just lost all his cards. I'm like, what's going on? Like, and they emailed me, and they're like, yeah, we don't know what's going on. They're like, you can go with SGC for like, I think it was $25 at that time. Like, you can get these with SGC, or we can send them back to you. And I was like, well, SGC is known for vintage. So I was like, okay, I did the SGC option. And then once I got them back, and I ended up keeping all the Clemente cards and all the Pirates cards, I was like, these are cool. And then I gradually kept sending SGC my Clemente cards, and PSA still wasn't open for a while. so it was never even open. And then I'm like, I'm just sticking with them. They did me right during that time, and their turnaround times were so good, and I just like how they look now. So
So it was never about it being an anti-PSA thing. It was just
no,
it ended up falling where you were SGC, and then we'll just stick with them now.
yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing about the grading company debates is some of this is similar to, like, I don't want to say cigarette companies, but once you hook somebody and they're like me, where they like everything to look the same, you have them hooked, whether they're mad that you went to PSA and you're working under the same umbrella company. I want my cards to be in the same holder. so
Yeah.
so like once they get some certain customers, they got them hooked, and there's
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I think that's one of the parts of the debate we don't talk about much, because a lot of guys are open to having multiple different, slabs in their collection, but a lot of us aren't.
Yeah. So Billy, when you send your cards in, I mean, I've seen on your channel several times you send them into SGC, not PSA. Why do you go SGC instead of PSA when more of your cards are in PSA holders than SGC?
Yeah, so all the PSA cards that I have in my collection minus one, I bought that way. So the very first card I ever sent in, I sent in through the card shop in Columbia to PSA, and it was a Mookie Betts rookie card. And I paid 50 something dollars for the express 10-day service. And it took 3 or 4 months to get this card back. In a 10, the value had gone down from $1,000 to 300, and in a 9, the value had gone down from 300 to 80. And of course, I got a 9. So by the time I spent $50 to grade it, plus the $30 I paid for the card while they had it for 4 months, the value, it lost 90% roughly.
How
So
long ago was that?
that was 2021, I want to say,
Okay.
early 2021. And so once I sent my first submission in, I sent it in to SGC. And then, like Theo said, they got me hooked. And then I've always sent any card I've had graded has been through SGC.
Yeah. Do either of you have any? I mean, I feel like a lot of people have talked and talked and talked about the SGC PSA thing, but I do think it matters, and I do think it's important, and I do think whatever happens is going to affect us. Do you guys have opinions on that, or is it just whatever?
How
Theo,
could we not?
Go ahead, Billy. What do you say?
go
I,
ahead,
I just
Billy.
said, how could we not have opinions on that?
Okay, so give me yours.
Well, my opinion is I hope nothing changes. My fear is that eventually it will. And one of these days we will wake up, and the reason why we love SGC, that company doesn't exist anymore. That's my fear.
And okay, so you have a hope and you have a fear, and what do you think will happen with your magic ball if you look into that crystal ball, shake up that that 8 ball? What does it
Right.
say? What does it say from your perspective?
Optimistically, I think SGC remains SGC. I'm going to trust Peter at his word, and they're going to continue to operate independently and provide us with the amazing service that they have been, which is why I grade with them.
How about you, Theo?
Yeah, I think there's more benefit to them staying separate. Not necessarily separate as they don't talk to each other and work together, but I mean having separate companies as they are now of what I just said. If SGC closes the door, I like to have all mine in tuxes. So I would switch my strategy to buying already graded cards basically that are in tuxes probably is what I would do. I think it's beneficial to them to stay as separate companies. So you have those SGC lifers, you continue to have them, and they don't just scramble to possibly another grading company outside of PSA. I think the other thing that's in play that's very interesting is the registry. Now, I know SGC has been promising the registry forever, but just hasn't been able to achieve it, and PSA has achieved it. So my opinion on the registry is it adds a ton of value to the amount of submissions they get. And a lot of people say, no, 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 it's not that big of a deal. It's a huge deal. And somebody said, well, a PSA SGC combined registry, that seems like a perfect both worlds. To me, the best of both worlds is separate registries, because now you have a Clemente SGC registry, you have a Clemente PSA registry. There's guys out there that would want to compete in both. So they would literally buy duplicate cards and SGC holders to compete. Nobody could tell me different. I think separate registries is the smartest way for those companies to go right now.
Do you think the parent company will do something like that, or do you think it's just a good idea that they won't use?
No, I think the parent company is going to use PSA's knowledge and have them help SGC make a registry. I 100%. And you already see there's chatter. PSA's helping SGC with some of the counterfeit technology they have in their slabs and things like that. They're already helping them with the counterfeit stuff. So I think they're 100% going to say, okay, where are you guys stuck at? Oh, well, we have all this data. Let's plug it into your system, into your app. I think they're going to make them help each other.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've heard really good arguments on that this helps PSA or helps SGC, and I've heard arguments that it hurts SGC. I mean, the argument for SGC, a lot of it is what you just said, is now they have access to deeper pockets with, registry experience. It would be easy to just branch it over and include them. They have more of a marketing budget, you know, and then I've also heard people say, I mean, and to me, the strongest argument I've heard so far in how this helps SGC is forever PSA tried to position themselves as the premium company, and we are the company, and everything else is secondary. But as soon as PSA buys SGC, they're saying we give this company gets our stamp of approval. This company's legit. We believe in what they're doing. We believe in how they grade. We believe in their customer service. We believe in the quality. And by spending, there's been talks of up to $100 million potentially is what they paid for SGC. If you're going to drop that much money on a company, you think that they are legit. Because if you didn't think they were legit, you just let them continue to flounder over there.
Yep.
And I think that's a really good argument for people in SGC that are SGC people. The thing I'm interested in is what's going to happen to the value of SGC slabbed cards, because we know, historically, there's been a gap between the value of PSA graded stuff and SGC graded stuff for whatever reason. Is it because people want to keep things matching and they started with PSA, or is it the registry? Is it what is it? We don't know. I mean, we have guesses. What's going to happen to SGC slabs? Is it going to help close the gap? I think that that's a really interesting question. And if people think that it's going to close the gap, then maybe now is the time to go out and buy a bunch of stuff in SGC slabs while there's still a gap, if it's going to get closed, because you're buying it at a discount right now. What do you think about that, Billy?
Well, we don't know, right? My hope is that what you said is exactly right, that PSA and SGC close the gap and they're viewed across the hobby as equals. I think another option for the set registry, like Theo was talking about, is maybe they do separate registries, but maybe they make another one where it's a combined registry too. And I think that will help SGC in the hobby. I think that SGC has been around long enough to where I agree with you. It doesn't make any sense for PSA to scuttle it. And SGC is not a brand like CSA or some of these other companies that were around back in the day that 20 years from now, no one's going to know who they are. SGC is still going to have that recognition. And I think if they do kind of scuttle SGC, that guys like Theo that want everything to match, eventually those SGC graded cards are going to run out. And a simple matter of supply and demand. As supply dries up, the demand holds steady, what happens? The prices are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows, right?
I think, Greg, I think the linchpin I'm going to go back is to the registry. And if somebody's out there wanting to speculate, and we don't really talk about that a lot, and it doesn't really interest me, but if somebody wanted to speculate, if you want to bet on the high grade vintage cards, the 9.5s or 10s in some of the big star cards, because when that registry comes, there's only a couple out there. And these grading companies aren't giving up big grades like that right now. So you buy the real high end or the super oddball stuff that might have five pop count for SGC. That would be the way to go. As far as like just Clemente in an SGC 5, like I don't see that gap. I don't see that gap coming around to. I think it's going to stay about the same even with the registry, because there's too many people who have the PSA registry and want everything to match also. So I don't see that. But high end stuff, absolutely, you're going to see that stuff take off with the registry.
So, not to spoil anything, but as you know, Theo, for a long time, one of the things I've done is I've been tracking continuously, PSA prices versus SGC prices. And about every 3 to 6 months, I redo a check-in and just how's it going now? What's moving? Where are things trending? And I'm currently in fact, a minute ago, I was putting the finishing touches on some of the presentation, and it was interesting. I think that you're going to find it, not to drop a clip, like to throw out but it was interesting. I was surprised. And whenever I do these data collections, I always go, man, am I going to do all this work and then I'm going to find nothing, or am I going to actually see a trend? Yeah. And there's a trend. There is a trend. And I think that you'll be interested to see what it is. So we're rapidly coming up on the hour mark. When I started this whole YouTube thing, I didn't know anybody that did YouTube. I didn't know a single person. The first person I met was Sammy Thunder. 4 months after I started, he had me on his channel. And then not long after that, Theo was the second person to have me on on his channel. Theo's actually the second person I'm literally the second person I met in YouTube. And now I feel like I've known Theo forever. And it's really only been about a year since I was on your channel. And I feel like I know you really well. But the circle of people that I've gotten to know is such a great group of guys. And I'm super excited, Billy, for you to be in that and watching you from afar, watching your channel and being a subscriber of your channel. Again, if you're out there and you're listening, Theo, Clemente Collector, and four collectors, and then Billy Ballgame, sports cards. If you haven't subscribed, highly recommend it. You know, there's a lot of channels that people say, oh, you should subscribe and you should watch their channel. Like, I literally am subscribed to your guys' channels and I literally watch your channels. It's not like one of these, you should subscribe just because. Like, I literally enjoy both of your guys' channels, and in Theo's case, two. So there's 3 channels represented by these 2 guys that I genuinely am recommending and think that you guys would really benefit from if you were to check it out. Because if anything else, it's a couple of really good guys. And it's always good to just hang out and hear cards and share ideas with good guys. Like, because if there's anything that the YouTube thing has done for me, is it's exposed me to other really good people. And I can genuinely say some of my better friends now live all over the country, which is crazy that I've even met some of these guys. You know, I'm jealous of Billy. He gets to hang out with Chris from Missouri from time to time and go to card shows together and stuff. Like, nobody in the YouTube world that I've become close with do I ever see in person. Like, I'm jealous of you guys that live in these highly densely populated areas where it's near people. So with that said, Theo, parting thoughts before we cut you loose.
Yeah, Greg, in the wrestling business, that's called a rub. I thank you for all the compliments you gave us. You know, I reached out almost a year ago because your content was outstanding. It was different. And it was just a bonus that we became friends and how great of a guy you actually are. So wow. I want to thank you for your friendship. I want to thank you for all the appearances you've made on Four Collectors. You're always a great panelist. So thank you for that, man.
Well, I genuinely, whenever you go, hey, want to be on? If I have hope that my calendar is free, because I have a blast. And I've seen Billy on Four Collectors, but we've not been on the same panel yet. But I've seen you on there a couple of times. So, and again, you know, I'm excited that we were able to connect and talk tonight. And you know, I'm looking forward to the National. Like, if I don't buy a card at the National, I'm going to be okay, because I'm going to get to hang out with a bunch of people I really like. So, Billy, anything last you want to send us off with?
No, just I appreciate you having me on, Greg. You're a dude that I thought I would get along with, and we have a similar collecting style. And then now I get to chat with you, and it just proves that my intuition was correct, and the check is in the mail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No,
but
I mean,
it's always
I hope
good hanging out with Theo too. I don't get to do it as often as I would like.
I know, and you guys you guys are both super tight with Chris. My problem is Chris doesn't like to text. He'll talk on the phone, but doesn't want to text. So I'll text him. I'll go, hey, buddy, nice video today. And he'll just go, thanks. I'm like, that's it. How about a little back and forth here?
He's busy signing autographs.
His fingers don't work.
He's another absolutely great guy.
Yeah.
I've not had him on my channel yet, but I'm going to do that because I love talking with him. He's just such a good guy.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for sticking with us. Again, Theo, Clemente Collector, and Four Collectors, and Billy Ballgame, Sports Cards. 2 great guys, 2 great channels. Check them out if you haven't, and we'll catch you guys later.
Bye, guys.